As language evolves and new terms enter the mainstream, teenagers are often blamed for debasing linguistic standards. But teens don't actually influence language as much as is often claimed. Very commonly, people think that teenagers are ruining language because they are texting or using shorthand or slang. But our language is constantly developing and changing and becoming what it needs to be for the generation who is speaking it. As a linguist, I find this really exciting because it shows me that our language is alive. During high school, teenagers often explore their own identities and may again choose to change their pronunciations and use language as a part of their identities. When these teens grow up and graduate from college or get a job, they may change their language again to sound more professional and meet the demands of their jobs and pressures of the workplace. The fear of teenagers ruining a language, therefore, is baseless. But this does not mean that languages do not need preservation. On one hand, language is evolving, primarily because of teenagers. On the other hand, many languages are also under the threat of being dominated by others. Even though teenagers are not responsible for this change, their role in preserving them is crucial. When language, along with cultural wisdom and pride, are no longer passed down to the next generation, children and our society as a whole lose something.
The rural poor are divided into subsets based on profession, typically, cultivators who own land and non-cultivators who do not. Cultivators are slightly better off, as they are able to make some money operating farms and charging tenants for using their land. Non-cultivators, however, are extremely poor, working as seasonal laborers on farms. Their pay is both low and erratic, as it is based on the schedules of farm owners and the other few employers available. The rural poor often suffer more than the urban poor because public services and charities are not available to them. Several factors tend to perpetuate rural poverty. For example, political instability and corruption, customs of discrimination, unregulated landlord or tenant arrangements and outdated economic policies often make it impossible for the rural poor to rise above poverty lines. Former residents of rural areas are typically drawn to the city for the perceived wealth of economic opportunities, but often, those dreams fall short. Compared to rural villages, there are indeed more job opportunities in urban areas. However, many migrants lack the skill set to take on many jobs, and positions for unskilled laborers fill up quickly. This shortage of jobs leaves new residents without a steady income, which creates a series of new problems in the city.
Ancient myth says that Atlantis was a powerful undersea city, whose warriors conquered many parts of Europe. There is little proof that such a city existed, but human fascination with the world under the ocean certainly has existed for centuries. Before scientists invented sonar, many people believed the ocean floor was a completely flat surface. Now we know that the seafloor is far from flat. In fact, the tallest mountains and deepest canyons are found on the ocean floor, far taller and deeper than any landforms found on the continents. The same tectonic forces that create geographical features like volcanoes and mountains on land create similar features at the bottom of the oceans. New species are discovered in the ocean each year by marine biologists and other ocean scientists. Many of these newly discovered species live deep on the ocean floor in unique habitats that depend on plate movement, underwater volcanoes, and cold water seeps. Previously, sunlight was thought to be the energy source that supported the base of every food web on our planet. But organisms in these deep, dark ecosystems have no access to sunlight, and instead metabolize hydrogen sulfide or other chemicals through different processes. With only 5% of the ocean explored, many more scientific discoveries await our future generations of explorers in this final unknown frontier of our planet Earth.
Governments and their agencies at all levels, from the smallest township to densely populated states, are trying harder than ever before to be more approachable and accessible to the residents of the area they serve. In the past, public meetings and traditional media were the mainstay of communication. Unless there is a big issue affecting a lot of people, these meetings are sparsely attended by the general public. But these days, the use of social media has changed the scenario. Websites have gone a long way in making government more accessible. Social media in government is a game changer. After all, not many things have changed the way the public interacts with governments, more than social media. On social media, people can engage in direct dialogue with politicians, civic officials, and even entire government agencies. It also gives them a chance to engage back. We also know how important it is for governments not only to adapt to a rapidly advancing world, but also how to take advantage of new forms of communication. Social media isn't just a good way to share memes and keep up with what's trending. It can also be a very powerful way for government agencies to interact with the public. Timeless lessons from Nelson Mandela's life story will endure for years to come. Mandela was a gifted visionary. He exercised a full range of cognitive, emotional and behavioral abilities to bring about profound change in South Africa. All leaders who aspire to be more strategic can learn from Mandela's behavior that distinguishes him as a true strategic leader. Mandela looked ahead and could see that South Africa's system of apartheid would not survive into the future. From his prison cell, he strategically assessed his moves and anticipated reactions. When offered freedom in exchange for renouncing opposition to the government, Mandela refused the offer. Mandela stood out among prisoners and guards as a man of principle and dignity, willing to sacrifice his life for his beliefs. Despite harsh prison life, Mandela mustered energy to challenge his keepers. Through word, deed and symbol, he challenged the system that denied him liberty. Mandela exemplifies how a strategic leader adjusts strategy and execution amid complex social, political, legal and economic forces without compromising deeply held values. Leadership is not just about motivating people and creating political support for a strategy, but also about maintaining broad support through successive adjustments to the plan.
Now you know that the process of fish farming is technically called aquaculture. This can be done in the ocean, on land, and can be used to grow marine or freshwater species. The environmental impact of farmed seafood depends to a great extent on the farming method employed. We should first know about the types of aquaculture before we proceed to their environmental impact. The first type is open net pen systems. These are usually found offshore in coastal areas or in freshwater lakes, but these are considered a high-risk aquaculture method as they allow for free and unregulated exchange between the farm and the surrounding environment. Farmed salmon are typically farmed in this manner, but the downside of this method is that they allow free exchange of high concentrations of waste, chemicals, parasites, and disease. Farmed fish can escape, and they also attract predators, such as marine mammals, that can get tangled and drown in fish farm nets. Then there are the closed systems, or closed containment farming methods, that use a barrier to control the exchange between farms and the natural environment. This significantly reduces pollution, fish escapes, negative wildlife interactions, and parasite and disease transfer from farms to marine and freshwater ecosystems. The last type we're going to know about is the recirculation system. Water in these systems is treated and recirculated. Almost any type of finfish can be raised in recirculating systems. Common species farmed in this manner include Arctic char, striped bass, barramundi sturgeon, and increasingly salmon. This system does not mix with natural water sources, which mitigates pollution, parasite transfer, and fish escapes.
Now, we all know that participating in sports provides us with numerous physical and social benefits. But it also has a downside, and that is the risk of sports-related injuries. As per the CDC, millions of children under 19 years of age are treated in the emergency department each year for sports and recreation-related injuries. But should this stop us from letting our children play? Obviously no. It's important that kids continue to do some type of regular exercise. Exercise may reduce their chances of obesity, which has become pretty common in children these days. It may also help reduce the risk of diabetes, which is a disease generally attributed to lack of exercise and poor eating habits. Exercise may also help children build social skills and give them a general sense of well-being, besides helping them build team skills. That is why it's important for parents to encourage their children to be physically active. It's also important to match children to the sport and not push them too hard into an activity that they may not like. Parents must teach their children to follow the rules and be safe when they get involved in sports, so they'll spend more time having fun in the game and not going down with an injury.
What is deforestation? You might know it as the loss or destruction of natural forests, which has taken the shape of a major global problem, not to mention that it has far-reaching environmental and economic consequences. We all know that trees are natural consumers of carbon dioxide, as they help absorb CO2 from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. The destruction of trees not only removes these carbon sinks, but the practice of tree burning and decomposition pumps even more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Did you know that 70% of the Earth's land animals and plants reside in forests? That's something for you to take note of. But many species of flora and fauna are on the verge of extinction. Do you know why? The answer is obvious: deforestation. Over 80% of the Earth's natural forests have been destroyed. The annual net global loss of forest area between 2000 and 2005 was over 7 million hectares per year. That is an area about half the size of England. Despite these staggering statistics, deforestation continues to happen on a massive scale. Much of the deforestation that is occurring today is in developing economies that consider it necessary for their development. These countries feel that developed countries cut down their forests centuries ago and reap the benefits from this deforestation, and it is unfair to deny developing countries the same opportunities. Street crime is relatively rare in Egypt. Most crimes reported in the press are either family dramas or con games of one kind or another. Drugs are illegal, though present in Egypt, and the users tend to be discreet. Even though there is visible presence of traffic police and police guards in areas where there are foreigners, still there are large areas of Cairo and many villages with no police presence at all. People are thus thrown back on their own resources to settle disputes, and there are well-known techniques of intervention to break up fistfights and of mediation for more complicated disputes. Even the police often act as mediators rather than prosecutors. In rural Upper Egypt in particular, disputes between extended families over property and power can develop into feuds. Social control appears to be maintained by a combination of strong values, expressed as Islamic, and by the constant presence of witnesses due to crowded streets and apartments. Anonymity in large Egyptian cities, let alone in villages, is nearly impossible. Perhaps another way to express the same point is to say that Cairo is a village of 15 million people. Alfred Nobel had written several wills during his lifetime, but the last one was dated November 27, 1895, a little over a year before he died. Nobel's last will left approximately 94% of his worth to the establishment of 5 prizes in physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, and peace to those who during the preceding year shall have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. Though Nobel had proposed a very grandiose plan for the prizes in his will, there were a great many problems with the will. Relatives of Alfred Nobel were so shocked that many wanted the will contested. It was unclear in which country Alfred had his legal residence. He was a Swedish citizen until age 9, but after that he had lived in Russia, France, and Italy without becoming a citizen. Nobel had been making plans for a final home for himself in Sweden when he died. The location of residency would determine what country's laws would govern the will and the estate. If determined to be in France, the will would have been contested and French taxes would have been taken. The will did not state what should be done if no prize winners for a year were found. Because of the incompleteness and other obstacles presented by Alfred's will, it took 5 years of hurdles before the Nobel Foundation could be established and the first prizes awarded.